Hey guys, so last week I had mentioned that I really want to start working on the interior of my west side garden, and today I'm going to go ahead and start doing that. It's really going to be a two-part video. So today I'm really going to be focusing on editing, and then in the next video I'm going to be focusing on what I'm adding back and with intention this time. So a little history behind this. This was the first bed that I planted when I first started gardening, and I really had no idea what I was doing. I really just kind of packed the bed full of everything that I went to the garden center to find, anything and everything that I thought was beautiful, and I never really thought about the seasonality of it. So what ends up happening is during the time when the daffodils have stopped blooming and the hydrangeas have not yet come into bloom, is the bed just kind of looks like a very lush but overrun, completely neglected garden bed. The two willows that I have planted here are completely overgrown, so I need to get those into control. As most of you probably know, willows, they can have kind of a mind of their own, so they need to be tamed and maintained quite often, and I have let those get out of hand. Now they can be pruned back fairly severely and absolutely nothing happens to them. I'm probably just going to be shaping them up today rather than pruning them back severely. I would say the biggest problem that I have in this garden bed though is that there isn't a focal point during this time of year. Everything is relatively similar height. It is a relatively similar texture and a relatively similar shade of green. So your eye just doesn't really know where to land. So what I'm going to end up doing is editing out a few things. So I'm actually going to take out the daffodil bulbs, and I'm going to go ahead and put them in a crate and save them until fall to replant them. Because what I'm thinking of is, rather than having small groups of daffodils dotted throughout the garden beds, I'm probably just going to create one really large drift of them in the fall. So in doing that, I think that alone is going to create a lot of negative space for me to work with. The other thing that I'm going to be removing are the drift roses that I have planted. I absolutely love them. They're complete workhorses in the garden. They are not divas. I don't need to deadhead them. They're a lovely shade of this pink yellow variety, and they bloom all the way until November. The problem is that they have completely outgrown their space, and because of that, the bed is looking really, really crowded. I also noticed that this sunrise heliopsis that I had planted in the fall of last year had very freely reseeded itself throughout the garden bed. Now, if I don't get a hold of that now, it's just going to completely take over the entire space. So I'm actually going to probably pull some of those seedlings out and relocate them to other garden beds to kind of create that cohesion so that they're all talking to one another. But I really need to be mindful of that because, like I said, something that reseeds itself so freely can really run over the entire garden bed really quickly. So that said, it's 90 degrees today. It's already incredibly humid. I am ready to get really hot and sweaty, and I probably will be a muddy mess by the end of this. But what I'm going to start with is by removing the drift roses. So I already have a spot planned out for them. I actually have already dug their holes. The reason why I'm starting with that is it's because it is going to be the largest edit within the garden bed. So it's going to give me the most breathing room for me to be able to work in and also to take a look at. But also, because the day is just going to progressively get hotter, you want to try to get the coolest part of the day in order to transplant something, especially like a rose, which can be really sensitive to transplanting. So I know that I'm going to have a little bit of transplant shock here, but after a couple weeks, it's going to be back to normal and totally fine. So I've gone ahead and dug the hole out. I'm going to dig the root ball out. I'm going to try to get as much of that root ball as possible in a nice big hole and just transplant it directly. Make sure I'm using my biotone starter fertilizer, and then just keep moving. All right, so that alone is already starting to make it look so much better and give me some breathing room. But now let's move on to the daffodils. All right, so the daffodils. The foliage is driving me absolutely crazy. I know you're supposed to wait until it's fully brown before you touch it because it's still sending energy back into the bulb. But since I'm redesigning this bed, I just can't wait around for it anymore. So they're coming out. I'll let the foliage finish dying back now that they're out and store the bulbs somewhere cool and dry until fall. But to be quite honest, I'm kind of on the fence in terms of putting them back in the garden to begin with. Because as much as I love them when they're blooming, I absolutely hate the way the foliage looks for an entire month long after they're done. That long, floppy dying down period bothers me every single year. So if they do come back, I need a plan for how to hide those leaves while they're doing their thing. And I genuinely haven't figured that out yet. So if you guys have any thoughts or recommendations on that, how you manage daffodil foliage in your design beds, leave them in the comments below. Because honestly, I think a lot of us deal with the same exact problem. That is a lot of daffodils. And again, it just feels so much better as I'm able to create a lot more negative space and a lot more breathing room. Now let's work on these monstrosities. Okay, so remember in my intro when I said I wasn't going to do a hard prune on the willow? Yeah, well, that didn't last. I ended up taking a Sawzall to it, a full hard prune. Here's my logic. I already had all the tools out, I was already in it, and I thought, why do this job halfway only to have to come back in a couple weeks or a couple months and do it all over again? Just get it all done right now. And honestly, a hard prune on a Black Cat Pussy Willow at this point in the season is not going to hurt it at all. Within a month, this thing is going to be large again, but manageable, back under control, and that's the difference. The other thing I wanted to address was the ends. They were starting to get really straggly and they were reaching out in every direction possible. So my goal with this plant has always been to keep it in tree form, clean, structured, and somewhat intentional. So I cut it back to the shape that I actually wanted it, and now it's going to grow from there. Now I did also order some sucker stopper, which I will be applying later on. That's going to be in part 2. And now for this dappled willow. I'm going in first with my Barnell pruners just to give it its shape back. Similar to the Black Cat Pussy Willow, I've limbed this up into a multi-trunk tree form. Not that you can tell right now. But anyway, limbing it up was completely intentional because I want it to have structure. I don't want it to exceed 5 feet. That really is the limit because once it gets above that, it just doesn't look right in the space. All right, so that's it for step 1 of this entire transformation, and I'm already really excited about the way this is headed. I feel so much better about the open space and the fact that I can see and think a little bit more clearly. And then I'm going to take you guys along with me in terms of what I'm adding back into the bed and how I'm thinking through it this time, rather than what I did the first time, which is just kind of put a jumble of plants in and see what happens. So I am ready for a shower and a cold beverage, and that's what I'm going to do. I hope you guys are having a good day, and I will see you in the garden.